What's up, guys? Welcome back to Point Kentucky. My name is Hunter Mitchell. That is Leah Edmond. Leah, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm good. Welcome to season two of Point Kentucky, everybody. We had a great premiere last year, so we're both very excited to be back. I cannot believe it is already time for volleyball season again. It feels like we just ended the season 2 months ago.
Oh, literally. I'm like, oh my goodness, it's already time for another season. But I mean, it's the best time of the year. So why wouldn't you want to rush to this time anyway?
It is, and Craig Skinner, as we know, likes to get the season started with a bang every year. So we're going to start the year with about as big as you can get because on Tuesday, Kentucky will travel right up the road to Louisville, Kentucky, and they will take on Nebraska, the one of the few teams that Craig Skinner has failed to beat his entire time at Kentucky. To his credit, he keeps saying he's going to keep scheduling them. One day it's just going to happen that he beats them. He's still doing it. He's a man of his word. He's still doing it. Before we get to that game, let's look at the roster. Obviously, last time we talked together and talked to you guys, Kentucky's roster looked a lot different compared to where it is now. Reagan Rutherford, she was finished. She had an extra year of eligibility if she wanted it. She did decide to use it, but elected to go to Texas, play for the Longhorns, team up with former Wildcat Maddie Skinner. And she will be playing back home, closer to family. I had a good relationship with her family, and they had no bad blood. They loved their time in Lexington. Could not say enough great things about the staff and about the team. She just wanted to play closer to home because she hadn't gotten to do that in 4 years. So you cannot blame her for that. But Kentucky loses their lefty on the right side, which is a very big asset they've had the last 4 years. And then obviously the other two big ones, Ajani Teeler and Elise Getzinger, both graduating from Kentucky. Elise also decided to use that 5th year, but she is playing for Creighton, who was ranked 12th on the top 25 poll. Probably not a coincidence, considering they got a great middle blocker pickup. And then Kentucky loses Jordan Thompson to transfer. She's playing in Kansas State. Those are kind of the big ones. We Thompson didn't play last year, but we were expecting her to have a pretty solid role this year and going forward, but she elected to go to Kansas State. So all that to say, the roster looks very different. Kentucky lost 3 starters. Leah, what are you seeing out of this roster? I'm assuming you've at least gotten to see them a little bit this summer. I'm not sure how much you have. What are you seeing out of this roster so far?
Well, I think it was helpful that this year they got to take their foreign trip. So every four
Hmm.
years, each NCAA program can elect to take their team on a trip to a foreign country. And so Kentucky this past May went to Japan and they were there for about 10 days. And so the great thing about that is you get training days. So instead of being done at about late April and not touching a volleyball again with a coach until August, you get to train for a couple more days in May. So they were able to get their new freshmen in and some of their transfers, allow them to start understanding Kentucky volleyball, and then they got to go and play other teams for 10 days straight, and they got to get more practice in, more coaching. So they have an opportunity to not, I mean, every team, it kind of switches. I mean, we went, the last foreign trip they went on was my senior year because of COVID. And so it's really beneficial. You get to get people in the gym before you start summer workouts, and you get to start kind of hammering in how you want to play Kentucky volleyball. You can see how people are doing because you're not playing your usual opponents. You're playing with a different ball and you're playing against very different styles of volleyball. So I think it was super beneficial for them. In terms of this roster, it's a beautiful looking roster. Craig found a way to fill in some holes, not only with the freshmen coming in, but even moving people on the roster already. So Megan Wilson has now moved back to the right side, which was her position that she played at Oklahoma before she transferred here to Kentucky. And so putting her back on the right side, now you have a 6'4" right side, which is huge, especially with some of the outsides that Kentucky's going to go against this season, to have her over there. And now that kind of opens up that outside position. You have multiple people who are fighting for that position, but I would not be shocked to see the freshman outside Asia in that position. She has a hammer of an arm. And I got to see a little bit of it while they were working camps and even as they were playing in Japan. Of she has a weapon of an arm. She's very fearless, my type of volleyball player. So you have that nice fight between her, Brooklyn DeLay, and Aaron Lamb. You have a bunch of veterans and you might have a freshman in there. And then that middle position is going to be very, very interesting to see who fits in with that. You have a 2 redshirt freshmen that are able to get in there. Not really a big veteran in that spot. You have some, a little bit of youngins, I guess, in that area. So it's going to be interesting with that. I mean, setter and bro, I think you're not going to see that much of a change. I would be interesting to see between Molly Tuzzo and Eleanor Bevan if one of them happens to get it. If Molly steals that away from Eleanor in her senior year, it's going to be super interesting. But they have enough depth that they might be able to show a little bit something that different. And of course, I mean, with Craig, non-conference is the time to do it, and he takes pride in, okay, maybe we might suck during this time, but once that mid-September conference time hits, you have no problem figuring out and knowing what you need to do then.
Yeah, you mentioned Asia Thigpen. He talked on Media Day about what Asia might be this year for Kentucky. She actually is an interesting player. When she came into Kentucky, she was actually listed as a defensive specialist slash libero and an outside hitter. We don't see that super often. So he even talked in Media Day. You are going to see Asia. We're just not sure if it's going to be in a back row capacity or if she's going to be in a front row capacity or if it's going to be a both. So her being battling against Aaron Lamb and Brooklyn DeLay in practice to figure out who gets that second starting spot is going to be really interesting because she is everything I've heard about Asia is just that she is a freak athlete and that she has a lot of natural ability to play the game. Obviously, I think a lot of people are excited to see what Brooke Bultima can do this year. Got that injury last year, but there was a lot of hype around what she could be last year before she got hurt. Even in the few warm-ups that I've gotten to watch Brooke, she looks really good. She loves the slide. So we know Elise loved that slide. It looks like you might be getting some kind of a replacement with Brooke in that regard. We'll see how well she can do. This is the first time she'll be playing real collegiate minutes this season. But everything I've heard about Brooke in practice has been Brooke looks really good. So I think they're really encouraged by what they're seeing out of her, even though she is relatively new because she didn't play last year. She got a full year to be in the system, to see how the coaching staff works, to travel with the team, all that stuff. So I think we're going to see a lot of great things out of Brooke. I'm excited to get to watch her play. And then, like you mentioned, the other middle blocker, is it going to be Delaney Hogan, the senior transfer? Is it going to be Kennedy Washington, the freshman? Again, Craig talked about they've got depth. Even Jordan Daly, who they've moved to the middle, there's some depth in that middle position that they're excited about seeing. Who wins the competition and who gets to stay there. Again, you mentioned Megan Wilson officially moving to the right pin where she's naturally more comfortable. Last year, we saw a lot of shuffling of her and Aaron Lamb in and out of the lineup, and I think some of their early offensive struggles were because they weren't ever in a rhythm because it was a new lineup every time. So it's cool to see her transition to her natural position on the right side. With Reagan Rutherford gone, you need a way to make up from that offense. Hopefully, with Megan officially knowing, hey, I'm starting on that right side, she'll get to get into a little bit of a rhythm from the very beginning. Because, like you mentioned, it's such a benefit to have her on the right pin being 6'4". You want to put as much size against opposing outside hitters when you're playing, the Maddie Skinners or the Harper Murrays of Nebraska, like all of these really big physical outsides. To have a right side that's 6'4" is a huge asset. So it's really cool to get to see Megan hopefully come into that role and be a little bit more natural with that position. Obviously, a lot of people have asked us on Twitter. There's we just scrolled through the roster. We obviously don't see Audrey Whitworth on the roster. She decided to step away from the program. Again, didn't hear a single bad thing about it. I think she just decided she was ready to stop playing volleyball right now, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's a big loss, though. You're losing a defensive specialist that had great instincts, that was a really good digger for Kentucky. There were a lot of games where she was an unsung hero. You quietly looked down and she had 18 digs, and you said, "Where'd that come from?" You're gonna have to figure out how to replace that. And then obviously looking forward to seeing the development of what does Molly Tuzzo be in a sophomore year? What does Brooklyn DeLay become in a sophomore year? We'll get to them in a little bit, but this is a roster that's kind of a hybrid. You've got a lot of seniors in big positions in Emma Grom and Eleanor Bevan and the setter and libero, but you've got a lot of youth in a lot of your offensive positions. So it's going to be interesting to see how does Kentucky play. Last year they struggled really early with killing the ball, so hopefully this year they can get off to a little bit of a better start. I think it's going to help to see Brooklyn, and now that she's had a year under her belt, you don't have to see that growing pain that we saw from her. One thing we need to note, Craig announced on Monday that Hannah Benjamin, the freshman outside, a lot of I'm really excited to see her play. She unfortunately hurt her knee right before that Japan trip, so she is out for the season. That stinks because I think a lot of people were excited to see her also be added into that outside hitter battle. She looked really, really, really our game that she played in the All-American game, excuse me. She looked great. She hit out of the back row really well. She's a good front row player. I was excited to see her. So unfortunately, we have to wait another year to see her. But outside of that, it seems like the staff is really high on what Kentucky can be. And we saw the ABCA release their poll this week. It looks looks like the country is excited about what Kentucky can be. Ranked number 9, I wasn't expecting them to be ranked that high, given what they lost last year in Rutherford and Teeler and Getzinger. Those are some seniors. Those are national champions. You lost all three of them, three of your 6 starters. Were you surprised to see Kentucky all the way up to 9 in the preseason?
A little bit. I was expecting more of a 10 to 15 range because I think that's
Hmm.
now Kentucky has solidified themselves that they're usually a top 15 team and they're going to stay in the top 15. So to see them at 9, I
Yeah.
was like, okay, then. But I'm not necessarily shocked, as in, like, oh my God, you put them too high. I think with the roster that they do have, I think that's the fun thing about it being a coaches poll is those coaches recruited those same players and know what they're capable of as well. And they also know
Yep.
what Craig is capable of a coach. And so I think that number encompasses not only the players, but who those coaching staff is, because regardless of what group of players Craig has, he's going to find a way to win. He's going to make sure that they're successful as many times as possible throughout the season. So I think that's also kind of a not a I guess not a shout out, but a praise to the coaching staff and what they're able to
Hmm.
do of knowing that, like, hey, no matter what this might look like, they might have 3 or 4 freshmen or people who have never played at a college level on the court, but that doesn't mean anything. They're going to still play Kentucky volleyball. So not shocking to see them that high up. I'm intrigued to see how quickly that changes, especially because there were some teams that I was like, whoa, I'm intrigued to see how they get through non-conference, especially because some of them
Hmm.
have some brutal schedules.
Kentucky included. Let's get to that schedule. Kentucky has 11 matches this year against teams that are currently ranked in that top 25. Not even counting Western Kentucky, which is the 26th ranked team. So technically, if you want to throw them in there as a asterisk, they're almost there. Kentucky has one of the hardest schedules I've seen Craig put together. And the funny thing is, I feel like we say that every year now with Craig, but he has built another gauntlet beginning next week with Nebraska. This is a schedule that's got the likes of Nebraska, Texas, Stanford, Penn State, Louisville, obviously, Florida. You've got Georgia, who's ranked in the top 25 twice. You've got Tennessee. Leah, this is a gauntlet.
It is, and it's kind of not their fault because of Texas and Oklahoma joining the
Hmm.
SEC. But I mean, that non-conference schedule isn't shocking at all, and it's definitely going to be a lot different than what we've seen the past 2 years, especially because last year they weren't able to host as many games home because
Hmm.
of the construction of Memorial. So I think it might be a little bit different than last year because they're getting probably double the chances to play at home that they didn't last year. I'm pretty sure I think on what they played maybe 2 or 3 games at
Yep,
home.
yep.
And I believe it was like that Pitt game and maybe one more game that they actually got to play at home during that
Yep.
non-conference. So I think it's going to be more normal in terms of how the non-conference works, getting into rhythm of you get to be at home and you get to be away. It's not you're traveling for 3 out of those 4 days and you're playing somewhere that you're not used to. You have no fans. So I'm expecting maybe a little bit of a difference, especially with Memorial opening up in the fall. I think it's going to be a lot of excitement around it, a lot of fun of getting to play at home because some of these girls, it's their first time getting to play in Memorial
Yeah.
Coliseum and being at home in that type of sense. And so I think they have the potential to maybe have a different non-conference than they'd had last year just because they're just getting equal opportunities to play at home and play away. But I mean, it's a hard schedule, and the also beauty of this is because they're playing such a hard schedule and Kentucky has solidified themselves as one of the top teams in the nation. They get to play a lot on national television. Starting with next Tuesday, they're playing on ESPN and big ESPN, not like ESPN2 or ESPNU. And so that's super exciting that not only does the volleyball world see Kentucky as a powerhouse, but networks see them as a powerhouse. So that game has
Yeah.
to be on television. I think that's super, super exciting that they're getting to play on such big networks and television times so people can see them play. And I think it's great for the sport and great for Kentucky.
Well, especially you mentioned Memorial being brand new and opening this fall. You look at all these games, you get Penn State, who's currently ranked 7th at home. You get Louisville, who's ranked 6th at home. You get Nebraska, not at home, but they're in Louisville, so they're still in your neck of the woods. You're going to get Texas at home in the SEC. Like, this is a schedule that it's really difficult, but you're going to get to see some really great matches in a brand new, beautiful Memorial Coliseum. The plans, the photos that they've been releasing, the videos, this new building looks like it is going to be an incredible venue. I am so excited just to be in there and cover games in general, but especially when the likes of Penn State and Louisville come to town, those are going to be games that are going to be so much fun. The fact that you got this schedule, yeah, it's really hard, but this is the perfect year to do it because the interest is going to be through the roof with Memorial being so brand new and so pretty. Let's shift to Nebraska. Our first game of the our first game of the season. It's time to go our first preview. It's about as big of a preview as you can get. Nebraska obviously went all the way to the national championship game last year before falling to Texas in straight sets. That was a straight set sweep, but Nebraska is really, really, really young. They had a lot of crazy talented freshmen. Those freshmen now have played a full year under their belt. They're coming into Louisville next week, having gotten, a whole offseason under the belt. Like this is going to be a true heavyweight fight. Harper Murray on the left pin as an outside hitter is incredibly talented. They have so many great pieces. Lexi Rodriguez is one of the best liberos, if not the best libero in the country. Like, what have you seen out of Nebraska, Leah? What's Kentucky need to expect? What do Kentucky fans need to expect out of this team next week?
Well, I mean, it's the experience. Like you said, they went to the national semifinals last year. They're led by two seniors, Merritt Beeson and Lexi Rodriguez was their unanimous
Yep.
captain decision they announced this week. And so they have so many weapons, but they also have that seniority. And it's Nebraska. They've played on the highest level in front of the biggest stages. And so coming into a Louisville crowd that might be more Kentucky favored or just Kentucky fans in general, that's not going to bother them. They're going to come in and do their job. They're really, really well known for their ball control. I mean, getting balls in the setter's hands as much as possible. And with Lexi Rodriguez, they do a number of staying in system, but she can become so frustrating for hitters. And I think that's going to be the thing that we're looking out for. If we do have a young starting lineup, especially in the hitter route, you cannot get frustrated because she's digging your balls.
Yep.
You just have to give her credit of she is the best libero in the country right now. And it sucks when she gets the balls up that you think that are down, but staying the course and realizing not every ball is going to be dug, but not letting that get into your head and not playing a void ball, which is always my fear when you have a really good libero, i.e. Morgan Hintz. I've played against her. When you have that type
Yep.
of libero, you sometimes start to think about where to hit more and you start trying to avoid the block, avoid where she is, and start making more mistakes than you need to. So the big thing is going to be playing Kentucky volleyball, not allowing what they're doing on the side of the net to affect what Kentucky is doing. And it's going to start from the service line. They're going to have to be so aggressive from the service line, which is not usually a problem. But in that stage on the first game, nerves are going to
Mm-hmm.
show. And nerves are going to show for the first 10 points for both sides. It doesn't matter how highly ranked you are, how many times you've been in that situation. The first game of the season is always the most nerve-wracking one because it's the first time you're competing and it counts. So getting through those first 10 points, like just riding the wave and letting you get through that and settle and then being able to play ball. But it is going to be them using their senior leadership to kind of help out those newbies on the court, especially when your first game is Nebraska of your college career. That's a big one to start with. But being able to stay the course and being fearless, because again, who cares that it's Nebraska? Even if it is them on the court right then and there, it's only 12 girls on the court. It doesn't matter about the name across the front of the jersey. You're going out there and you're playing volleyball to the best of your ability.
Well, two things happened last time these two teams met. For one, we got the longest rally in any match last season between Kentucky and Nebraska, that rally that lasted over a minute, that went viral on every social media platform after it happened. So that should give you an indication of the kind of team Nebraska is. You should probably remember they dig everything, and that's probably going to happen again. Last year, again, Kentucky was so bad offensively early in the year. We all went into that Nebraska match going, oh, this could be like double bad because they already are struggling to score and Nebraska digs everything. But remember, that match was the match where Kentucky found something. They felt like they hit a switch and all of a sudden we're beginning to generate offense. And when they can do it against a team as talented as Nebraska, that's what set them up on that trajectory to do it against everyone else last year. It's why they became one of the best offensive teams in the country. Allowing the fact now that Brooklyn DeLay has seen a team like Nebraska, she played them last year and now knows, how do I recycle the point? How do I tool the block? How do I get around it? That's going to help, I think, Kentucky. I don't think they're scared of Nebraska. They weren't scared of them last year, but you were coming off of an early preseason where you'd lost so much and where you were struggling so much offensively. To some degree, it was like, well, man, this is going to be frustrating. But they, in the middle of that match, really found something. I think that could even carry over into this year because those players are still there. They're still Brooklyn Brooklyn DeLay and Emma Grome, focal points of the offense. Megan Wilson was there last year, Aaron Lamb. Like, there's still a lot of hitters that played last year, and I think they're not going to be unfamiliar with the kind of play that Nebraska has. You mentioned serving pressure. Craig pointed out, someone asked him, what have you seen out of this team in practice early in the preseason? And he said, this is one of, we said this last year a lot, but he said the serving pressure that we're applying in the gym is unlike any team I've ever seen play here. I don't know if you noticed this when Brooklyn played with the USA team this summer. She has got a new hybrid jump serve that reminds me, Leah, of what you unveiled this year in Athletes Unlimited. That when she was getting it in, which she was actually, I was surprised at how much she was getting it in, how frequently it was lethal. It was almost impossible to not only keep the ball up, but to keep it up in system. I'm intrigued to see if A, she sticks with that, and B, if she can do it effectively enough to get Nebraska out of system along with the rest of the team. It sounds like Craig is really, really high on what this team can do from the service line, which is an area that we haven't. Kentucky's been good. They've been solid the serving game for the last several years. I don't think they've ever truly been elite. And I think it's interesting that he's kind of pointed that out as one of the things he's noticed in practice early. We'll see if this team can become that, because if they can, then you will have a chance in every big match you play, whether you're playing Penn State, Texas, Nebraska, Florida, Louisville. Service pressure is the name of the game. That's how you get the team out of system, and it's how you win matches. I'm going to be really intrigued, especially Tuesday, to see, like you mentioned, you have to get Nebraska out of system. They are too talented offensively at the setter position with Bergen Riley, and too talented offensively with their hitters. If you don't get them out of system, they will crush you. So I'll be really interested to see what Kentucky can do from behind the service line next Tuesday. I think that's going to be one of the biggest keys of the game, along with, like you said, controlling your nerves, limiting your errors. You cannot have errors against a team like Nebraska. They play too clean. So you have to beat them, because they will not give you points free based off of their own errors. You're just going to have to go out and get the point yourself, get the kill yourself. They're not going to give it to you. So this is going to be a really interesting night Tuesday. Obviously, the match after that, after we get Kentucky, Nebraska, we get Louisville, Wisconsin. So it's going to be a really, really awesome night of volleyball on ESPN. I will be at the Center. I live in Louisville now, so now it's great that now they are right in my backyard for this first game. But I will be at the match Tuesday. Really, really excited in general for what this is going to be. It's a great event. The fact that we're getting the first serve of the season in Louisville, and then the last serve of the season, regardless of the teams, will also happen in Louisville, with the Final Four being here at the Center as well. It's just really cool. The fact that ABCA is doing this is such a cool event, and a great way, truly a great way to kick off the volleyball season, with it being on ESPN and being four of the best teams in the country. So let's transition to you, Leah. Let's transition to some Kentucky stuff that's not current. Obviously, you have played professionally. Avery Skinner just won a freaking silver medal in the Paris Olympics. Congratulations to her and what the U.S. team for doing that. But let's talk about PVF and Athletes Unlimited. Obviously, you won that when we were talking last year. Still, PVF, you guys made the Final Four. I don't know if you want to do a little quick recap of the PVF, and then talk about, when does Athletes Unlimited in the fall start for you this year?
So yeah, PBF was super cool. First season of that, we had 7 teams, and it just went really well. Of course, with the first season, you're going to have some growing pains of learning new things, but it was super cool. I think one of my favorite parts about it was that we have this program called Bolt 6. And it's basically where everything that happens on the court is now on a computer, and you have about 12 different cameras angled at the court at any time, and there are no line judges. There are no one, I mean, even the down refs aren't really making as many calls anymore because the cameras see everything. It is a beautiful thing. The less that you have people and humans making decisions, the better. Because there were so many balls that I hit that if it was a person calling it, it definitely would have been called out and not in. So it really helped my stat sheet out, because I was like, yeah, I'm hitting all these balls in the deep line, like they're not out. But it was super cool. I played in Atlanta. We did really well. We were regular season champs and went into the playoffs as a #1 seed, lost in the semis, but it was a really fun season. Super excited to go back to Atlanta again and start in January. I'm not playing Athletes Unlimited this year.
You're not.
I have taken a hiatus from Athletes Unlimited. As
You deserve it. You deserve a rest.
I have a torn labrum in my shoulder, and so playing basically a 9-month season was really, really brutal for my shoulder. And to preserve my health for my Atlanta season, I was going to take a little break from Athletes Unlimited, but you'll
Hmm.
still see me on TV because I'll be commentating. And for the first time in my career, I'm going to do ESPN games. So you'll see me on SEC Network
Awesome.
doing other SEC games as well as Kentucky games, which I am super excited about. But yeah, it's been a great off season for Kentucky volleyball in terms of the pro world. We just, all of us professional players just love Kentucky so much, and getting to represent them on the big stages internationally is super, super fun. And it's just been a real joy.
Well, and just because you are not playing, there are still Wildcats playing in in Athletes Unlimited. Kaz Brown is signed back on. Is Ajani signed back on, or is she just doing the coaching?
She is
You don't know?
coaching.
I'm
So,
Yeah,
in
she's coaching with
terms of
Vandy.
Athletes Unlimited, I believe the only Kentucky Wildcat playing is Kaz Brown.
Is Kaz? Yeah, I think Gabby's out, and I know Allie's out too. So you can still go
Yeah.
watch Kaz. She's still playing for Orlando. So, and we're adding what? They're adding. Are they?
They're
They're
adding
not adding any teams. It's still
Indianapolis.
just the four
They're adding
for
Indianapolis
PVF.
for PVF. So PVF, we will
Yeah.
now have Indy in there as well. But yeah, me, Kaz, and Z are all signed to teams for PVF, and then we're just gonna have to wait and see if any of these Kentucky Wildcats get drafted. I think that's the cool part now is that
Hmm.
people can get drafted, and so a lot of the hopefully Kentucky Wildcats that are playing right now as seniors will want to continue playing on. But yeah, there's only one in Athletes Unlimited, three in PVF right now, and then others
Yeah.
are overseas.
Awesome. Well, it's regardless of which team you're pulling for, it's fun to see former Kentucky players in the actual league. So you can still go watch. Professional volleyball in general is cool to see. Again, whether Kentucky's in it or not. So if you still want to watch volleyball because you can never get enough, like if you're like me and Leah, then you can still watch all of that this fall. Watch the Athletes Unlimited, and obviously Leah will pick up PDF in January. Is that when you all start?
Yes.
Yes. So pick up in January, right after the conclusion of the college volleyball season. So volleyball doesn't end anymore in December. It now ends in like May, which is great because used to you were done for basically 9 months until the next August. But we don't have that anymore. Otherwise, I think we're all finished up. We will see you guys after the Nebraska match. We're going to do a recap of that one. Hopefully, we'll be recapping a win. Will you be there Tuesday, Leah?
I've not figured that out yet. We will
Okay, well, if
see.
Leah is there, we will do an episode in person. If not, we'll jump on the computer and do it that way. But otherwise, we will see you guys the rest of the season. Episode 1 of season 2 is officially completed. Thank you all for joining us. We will see you guys soon. Thank you, Leah.